On behalf of the City of White Plains, I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us today as we honor our fellow countrymen, both men and women, who made the ultimate sacrifice in defending our country so that we could be here today. The host post today is American Legion Post 135. Memorial Day, a federal holiday since 1967, originated from the American Civil War to honor the Union and Confederate dead. During the early 20th century, the occasion has been extended to recognize all Americans who have sacrificed their life during military conflict. Their sacrifice should inspire us with a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude to the freedoms that we enjoy. Let us vow to never forget their sacrifices. Today's ceremony is dedicated to our deceased honorees, Jack Reedy, U.S. Navy, and Air Force Technical Sergeant Joseph Lim. Jack Reedy of White Plains graduated from White Plains High School in 1949. He enlisted in the United States Navy in 1951 and served proudly until 1955. He then became a City of White Plains firefighter until his death in 1984. Jack served as a past commander of American Legion Post 135. Joseph G. Lim of West Harrison, New York, died on December 21st, 2015, from wounds received in action while serving his country in Afghanistan with the Air National Guard. Joe served 3 tours of duty in both Iraq and Afghanistan with the 105th Base Defense Squadron. Throughout his military service, he received numerous awards and commendations to include the Purple Heart, and he is set to receive the Bronze Star Medal with Valor. In 2000, Joe wanted to continue protecting people and joined the New York City Police Department. He was a decorated officer. I'd like to have the City of White Plains Public Safety to post colors. Please stand. Singing the national anthem will be Sia Tafano. Please join her.
Please join me in the singing of the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets spread glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night
We'll now have the invocation by Chaplain Robert Donnelly, U.S. Marines.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We gather here today not as a tribute to the veterans who have served so admirably through the years. We wait until November for Veterans Day to do that. But today is a day that we honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Those 16, 17, 18-year-old young men who came off the farms of Iowa and Kansas and throughout the entire nation because they didn't want to miss out on this. This was going to be exciting, and there was nothing such as the glory of war. Well, of course, once they got there, they realized that there is no glory in war, and that all there is just death and struggle. And they were trained and taught by NCOs who were not much older than they were, 20, 21, 22, but had a little bit more knowledge, and their main job was keeping those young men and young women alive. Some made it, some didn't. Unfortunately, a great deal didn't. They had to learn quickly, and if they didn't, they paid the ultimate sacrifice. But these are the people that we are remembering today. All of these people. And we want to, today, remember the fallen, honor those that serve and their families, and finally, by our example today, just being here and every day, to teach our young as well as our communities the value and price of freedom. Well, we also bear in mind and in our heart our unique history. Then, in the process of this, help us, Lord, to embrace what it truly means to be American, what the blessings are, as well as the responsibilities that come with that freedom. We ask for mercy and comfort for the families of those who have known loss and sacrifice, because when the soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, Coast Guardsmen, when they serve, the family serves. Help us to hear our hearts and share in their sorrows and joys, and continue with them in friendship and care. Grant them, O Lord, your peace.
We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance by the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts.
Salute. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I'd like to bring up Cynthia Kaufman, President of the Daughters of Liberty's Legacy, for the reading of Flanders Field.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
I'd like to bring up Dennis Jones, Commander Jack Collins, and Frank Krogan for the reading of the list of 2015-16 deceased veterans. Over the past year, 135 veterans who resided in the city of White Plains passed away. I'll be reading the first 33, followed by Dennis Jones. Philip Adams, Coast Guard. Frank Alfano, Army. Dr. David Amler, Army. Thomas Alward, Navy. Robert Ballin, the Army. Michael Bogie Jr., the Navy. Michael Boylan, Navy. Robert Brianti, Army. Robert Broderick, Air Force. Timothy Broderick, Army. Joseph Brogan, Navy. Paul Brown, Air Force. Arthur Brucewitz, Marine Corps. Louis Caputo Jr., Air Force. Ann Carnavale, Army. Frank Cito Jr., Army. Vincent Churchiara, Navy. Henry Christensen, Navy. Lucy Chiflon, Navy. Anthony Ciaramella, Army Air Corps. Jacob Clark, Air Force. John Coleman, Air Force. Robert Connolly Jr., Air Force. John Cregan, Marines. John Kuko, Army. John DeLee, Navy. Robert DeWright, Army. Billy Homer Dillon, the Army. Pasquale DiPrezito, Army. William A. Donovan, Navy. John Drohan, Army. Julian Duran, Navy. And Robert Durden, Army.
Salvatore Fiala, Army. Sam Finelli Jr., Army. Anthony F. Fidel, Army Air Corps. Morton Friedman, Army. Angelo J. Fucci, Navy. Leonard Fuchs, Army. Ronald A. Garbarini, Army. Eddie W. Garnett, Army. Robert Janae, Navy. Anthony Peter John Brome, Navy. Vincent Jans Casbro, Army. Maruso Gisandi, Army. Martin Samuel Gitto, no listing. Robert Giuntini, Air Force. Kenneth C. Glanville, Navy. Sam Grass, Air Force. Marshall Green, Air Force. Stuart Green, Army. William Greenhill, Marine Corps. John Joseph Gulick Jr., Navy. Herman A. Heifel, Air Force. Ralph Harrison, no listing. Sam Hassan, no listing. Henry Helliker, Navy. Dr. William Milton Jackson, Army. Abraham Jenkins, Army. Carol Ann Johnson, Air Force. Thomas P. Keary, Marine Corps. Walter John Kirby, Army. Robert Kiss, Army. Liana Knight, Marines. Wayne Wesley Croquist, Air Force. Erwin Lebedorf, Air Force.
Anthony Lattarulo, Army. Joseph Lem, Air Force. Samuel Lieberman, not available. Richard Leinhardt, Air Force. Sal Longo, Army. Mayor Ludden, not listed. Hugh Kenneth McGee, Army. Philip Marinelli, Army. Calvin Edward McClure, Army. John McGinnis, U.S. Marines. Herbert L. Meltzer, Army. Philip Merkel, Army. Louise Montoro, Air Force. Philip R. Moran, Army. Dennis Morgan, Army. Erwin Morse, not available. August Mullinger, Jr., Air Force. Robert Murphy, Army. Irving Natter, Army. Edward O'Gorman, Army. David Sullivan, Army. Bruce Richard Olmsted, Army. Dominic DeColo, U.S. Air Force. Anthony Simon Pohl, Army. Clay Price, Jr., Marine Corps. William M. Purdy, Navy. Peter Paul Robasco, Army. Robert Radcliffe, not listed. Kurt Reisenberg, not listed. Ralph Richard Renzi, Army. Ralph Rickey, U.S. Marine Corps, Maritime Service. James Robertson, Navy. James Henry Rogers, Army.
Leonard Rosa, Air Force. Anthony Rubico, Army. Daniel Sandler, Army. Peter Sarubi, Army. Ernest Shadable, Army. Charles Schneider, Navy. Nathan Shen, Army. Martin Shearer, no listing. Joseph Scalza, Navy. Dominic Scopoletti, Army. Lionel Seminit, no listing. Martin Shaw, Army. Dominic Sicilian, Marine Corps. John Simone, Army Air Corps. Barry Soweski, Army. Thomas Sobel, Army. Victor Spinelli Sr., Army. Paul Sprenger, Marines. William Straub, Army. John Henry Stroud, Army. Anthony Torres, Navy. Gaetano Troiano, Army. Nicholas Troiano, Army. Frank Trotta, Navy. Michael Ursi, Army. Robert Black, Army. Bruce Weaver, Coast Guard. Sidney Wiener, Army. Jerome Weingrad, Army. Sam Witchell, no listing. Andrew Yako, Navy. Dr. Alvin Yapalata, Army. Edwin Zemmel, Army. That concludes the list of veterans who passed in the city of White Plains. The committee and I noted that this year there was an unusually large amount of our veterans. 135 residents of the city of White Plains served in the armed forces and passed last year. While there is still a current war, we will read the names of those residents of Westchester County that passed in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars to date. Michael Arciola Elmsford. David Ayala Nurishel. Caillou Hoop Cha Chappaqua. Kevin Cumming, North White Plains. Philip Esposito Suffren. David Fahey, Yorktown. Edward Frank, Yonkers. Justin Garcia, Valley Cottage. Merlin German, Greenberg. Bernard Gooden, Mount Vernon. Courtney Hollingsworth, Yonkers. Gifford Hurt, Yonkers. Eric Jones, Pound Ridge. Anthony Colladin, Purchase. Anthony Lagman, Yonkers. Joseph Lem, West Harrison. Manuel Lopez III, Havistraw. John Malone, Yonkers. John Pryor, Mount Vernon. Efren Sanchez, Portchester. Steve Baluchios, Airmont. And Robert White III, Peekskill. I serve proudly as the liaison to the Mayor's Veterans Committee, and I want to thank everyone. I note here that, and it was a difficult decision to cancel the parade due to the weather, but we have great representation, and I want to thank all the groups that I note here. We have members of our Common Council, our school board, volunteer fire department, our own public safety officers and firefighters. We have our Girl Scouts, our Cub Scouts represented, and many of our members of our community. So thank you all for your willingness to adjust and still come here to honor our veterans. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Mayor Tom Roach.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. And I also want to thank the committee and the veterans who worked so hard to make this day come together. It's disappointing to not have the parade, and it's always poignant to have this ceremony in the Soldiers and Sailors, before the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in the rural cemetery. However, I believe it's also poignant to have the ceremony here this morning. This is the official Veterans Memorial of the City of White Plains, the rotunda of this city, where there are plaques in place which honor all of those who lost their lives while serving our country from the Battle of White Plains through Vietnam. And when it was built in the 20s, you see that the wall is completely full of the plaques. In World War I, they list everyone who served, and I think they believed at the time, as they said, that that was it, we're done. That's the end of that's the last war, but of course it wasn't, and unfortunately we've had to add plaques since then. But I would suggest to you that before you leave today, just take a look around and look at the different people who gave their lives and the people who served in some cases, and take a moment to remember them, which is what the point of this whole day is. Right outside this room, you will see pictures of most of the men who gave their lives in World War I. And you will be struck by how young they all are, and you will be struck by how late in the war they died and how close together they died. I have researched one of the veterans, Hugh Drumgold. He was an African-American who served with the Harlem Hellfighters, was attached to the French Army because it was a segregated military at the time, was shot in battle, was brought to a French hospital, where the medical records that we have are in French, and then was transferred to American care where he passed away, was survived by his mother and a daughter. And the daughter, in some of the records, is an indication the veterans were in New Jersey, where she was being raised by her aunt, were petitioning the government to make sure she was getting the right age she should have been getting due to her father's passing. So the veterans were on top of that. But it's important to come out and remember that as we do honor those who gave their lives, and as was correctly pointed out, Veterans Day is for those who served, and Memorial Day is for those who gave their lives. Right now we have people, men and women, all around the world putting their lives at risk, despite their knowledge of that risk, so that we might live in peace and freedom. We're in a room right now where democracy takes place at least once a month. You know, we don't have the right to have every decision be something we agree with, but in this country we have a right to express our opinion with regard to the decision. We have the right to vote and determine who represents us. And I'll also point out that down in that rotunda, every election day there is a polling place. And I think that is great symbolism. This is why people pick up weapons, put on a uniform, and go and defend their country, to protect us, to protect our families, and to protect our freedoms. And that's something we should never forget. I have the honor of presenting two proclamations. First is from Congresswoman Nita Lowey. As you all know, the congressional district is large, and so there are many places to be. So she's asked me to present that proclamation today, again honoring those who gave their lives in service of our country. And I have also the city proclamation, which declares today Memorial Day, and asks that Americans observe Memorial Day and reflect on the sacrifices of men and women called to protect and defend our freedoms. And the City of White Plains continues this tradition of reflection. We express our appreciation for those who, as Abraham Lincoln said, gave the last full measure of devotion to ensure the survival of our nation and our freedom, a freedom we all enjoy due to their service. 2016 marks the 100th anniversary of the incorporation of the City of White Plains. As we honor and celebrate our own history, we pause to reflect upon the cost of freedoms and remember those lost during the Battle of White Plains and all those who have honorably served this nation during its 240-year history. The City of White Plains proudly salutes the 2016 Memorial Day program Post, the American Legion Post 135, who resolved to honor the fallen and continue the fight for liberty and justice for all. And therefore, I, Mayor Thomas M. Roach, direct the United States flag be flown at half-staff during Memorial Day on all City of White Plains buildings and grounds, and request the people of the City of White Plains display that flag at half-staff from their homes and businesses. At this time, I would like to introduce our Grand Marshal, Jack Collins, Commander of the American Legion Post 135 in White Plains on Mitchell Place. Commander Collins is a lifelong resident of our city. He graduated from White Plains High School. In 1957, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served his country until 1961. He continued to serve proudly as an NYPD officer from 1962 to 1983. Jack has been a member of the American Legion Post 135 for 27 years, holding numerous positions, and is currently the commander. It is a pleasure to introduce Commander Jack Collins as this year's Grand Marshal. Jack.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by saying how humble and honored I am to be recognized as the Grand Marshal for this parade. I would also like to thank the parade committee, the mayor, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Chong, and all of the police officers and firefighters present here today. And again, without except all the members of the American Legion Post 135. But this ceremony is not about me or the living veterans. Rather, it is about our deceased veteran honoree, Jack Reed. It is also about the 135 names of the veterans from White Plains who have passed away during the last year, which we have just read. It's about the veterans in every cemetery across this great nation, whose graves have been adorned on this day with the American flag for which they fought. From Arlington National Cemetery to the White Plains Rural Cemetery, from the East Coast to the West Coast, these cemeteries are covered with American flags. I would like to close by reminding all of you that the next time you visit a grave of a relative, and if you see a grave setting nearby with the American flag on it, pause for a moment and simply say, "Thank you for your service," and I thank you.
I'd like to have all those who will be placing wreaths to step into the hallway. That would be Mayor Thomas Roach, Commander Jack Collins, the Public Safety, the White Plains Historical Society, the Daughters of American Revolution, and the Daughters Liberty Legacy. We'll now have the placement of the city wreath, Mayor Thomas Roach and Commander Jack Collins. We'll now have the placing of the public safety and placement of the home defense wreath by the Public Safety Department. And now the placement of the White Plains Historical Society wreath. We'll have the placement of the Daughters of American Revolution wreath. We'll have the placement of the Daughters of Liberty's Legacy Wreath. Deborah Palazzo and Cynthia Kaufman, in memory of the 14 White Plains Vietnam veterans who died in combat. We'll now have the placement of the poppies by the Ladies Auxiliary American Legion Post 135. Before the benediction, I just to acknowledge members of our council are here, Milagros Laquona and Beth Smader, and also from the White Plains School District Board of Education, Jim Rickey. He's here. There he is back there. Thank you. Okay, we will now have the benediction, Chaplain Robert Dunn.
Good morning again. To those of us who are left behind, we realize how futile words are, mere words are, to express our deep and abiding sympathy to your loss. May you find that he is at least, or she is at least at rest, and his endless peace. Generation after generation, all of the shadowy peoples of the past have lived as we have lived, perplexed and mystified by death, have gone into the great beyond with hearts filled with wistful longing, as all of us must go. Let us go forth, dear Lord, to peace or in peace with courage, holding fast to that which is good, rendering to no one evil for evil, but strengthen the faint-hearted, supporting the weak, helping the afflicted, and honoring all people, and loving and serving them in thee, O Lord. Thankful always, dear Lord, for your gifts. We pray that you send us away in harmony, peace, and goodwill to spread the contagious spirit of patriotism and devotion to thee wherever we go. God bless you all. Amen.
All please rise for taps, which will be followed by God Bless America.
Please join me in singing God Bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
That concludes today's ceremony. The wreaths will be brought to the Rural Cemetery, and please join us at the American Legion Post at 57 Mitchell Place for refreshments. Thank you all for coming out today.